Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the meeting for the Orange County Funding Corporation Audit Committee. If everybody would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bill, if we can have a roll call, please?
Yes, Susan Walsky,
Present.
Dean Tambury,
Present.
Mark Green.
Present.
Okay, Mr. Rinaldi's not here, of course, he resigned from the board. We haven't filled the remaining seat here, but so all current members of the committee are here.
Thank you. And this meeting was properly noticed. It was noticed on February 28th, 2024 from the chairperson of the Orange County Funding Corporation, Jeffrey D. Christ, regarding it. So the meeting is now officially open with that, and we're going to go right to our new business.
Yes, I'm remiss in not doing the rest of the introductions. Myself, CEO Bill Fioravanti, Kelly Riley, our project manager, Marty Boras, our staff members here as well, and then of course Jose Rojas doing audio visual, film acquisitions, marketing, and our guests from PKF, O'Connor Davies, our auditors, Mark Callanan and Melissa Zopp.
Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for that.
So I'd like to get right into our presentation. This is our annual fiscal audit for review and approval. It's going to be presented by Melissa from PKF O'Connor Davies.
Great, thank you. So I'm Melissa Zopp. I was the engagement partner this year on the audit, which means Mark Callanan, he's the director as well, he was in charge on the audit. So what we did was we prepared some slides for you, so we'll go over this handout. In addition, you have a copy of the management letter and then a draft of the financial statements as well. But for this presentation, we'll focus on the handout. If you have any questions, please ask as we go through the slides. So today for the OCFC, we'll be covering some required communications that we have for you. And then we'll go over the significant year-over-year changes. So part of the external audit, management and those charged with governance has certain responsibilities. First, selecting and implementing appropriate accounting policies, making sure that the financial statements are presented in accordance with the United States generally accepted accounting principles. You should first establish internal controls and then do a periodic review to ensure that those controls are operating effectively, and just make sure you have appropriate checks and balances throughout the year. You also want to make sure that the organization is in compliance with all of your laws and regulations and any provisions that with contracts that you enter into during the year. And then lastly, provide us as your external auditors all of the financial records and the supporting documentations that we ask. And I just really want to give a big thanks to Bill, Kelly, and Marty. It's a lot to go through the audit process, so I genuinely appreciate it. So thank you. On the next slide, on slide 4, we also have some responsibilities as part of this process. The largest one is to form and express an opinion. So the first opinion we're issuing is the independent auditor's opinion. It's called an unmodified opinion. It's also sometimes referred to as a clean opinion. This is the best opinion that the organization can receive. We also issue a yellow book report, which is a report on internal controls on your financial reporting as well as your compliance. We do communicate in writing any deficiencies that we identify during the year. For the OCFC, we did not identify any management comments, which we can point to in the letter. We do advise the appropriateness of the accounting policy, so we review them regularly. And then if there are any fraud or illegal acts that were noted during the audit, we would have informed you prior to today, so we're happy to report that there were none this year. We did not encounter any significant difficulties. There were no uncorrected misstatements noted, no disagreements with management, and then most importantly, we did maintain our independence as external auditors. So I'll go ahead and turn over to Mark to go over the numbers.
So on this next slide, we have the income statement for OCFC. What this income statement takes out of the spiral bound report, page 7. But the spiral bound report is only shown current year. This shows you a comparison from this year to prior year with the amount that changed. So if you start from the top, your operating revenues, you can see your total operating revenues this year was only 2,500, whereas prior year was 108,000. That's due to these closing fees. There were no projects closed in 2023. In 2022, you closed on the Mount St. Mary's 2022 bonds. So, I mean, the point of the funded corporation, you would want to keep closing going forward, so you'll see this revenue increase going forward. But the good news is there was an offset for this decrease in revenue this year. If you go down to the non-operating revenues, which is more towards the bottom, you can see the increase this year from 4,000 to about 85,000. That was interest income. So with the interest rates skyrocketing, you got a lot more interest income. It didn't totally offset the decrease in the revenue up top, but it offset a big chunk of it. So, but that's not something you can rely on every year, obviously.
No, obviously.
So, yeah. So just then your operating expenses, you can see it went up from about 10,000 to 16,500 in total. A big increase was in your professional fees. That's just the legal fees. That's nothing out of the ordinary there. That's just based on year to year what you need to have legal fees for. The bad debt expense went up. That's just the change in the allowance, basically. Your insurance went down. Your project and special initiatives went down. So that's basically your expenses. So the bottom of this page shows your net position. So at the beginning of the year, you started with a fund balance of 1.8 million. Your total revenues over expenses had you a change in net position in the positive of 71,000. So your net position started at 1.8 million, you ended at 1.9 million. So on to your next slide is your balance sheet. And the same thing, this is comparative. This is taken from page 6 of the spiral bound book. You can see your cash went down, but your investments went up. There were no investments last year, but that $547,000 is a TD Bank certificate of deposit. So those together, your cash stance is similar to last year. Your loan net of allowance, you do have loans still receivable, but they're totally allowed for now. Basically what that means is you have receivables still out there for these loan balances, but you might not receive them, so you allow for them. And then if you do actually receive them, it just goes straight into revenue. So it would increase your fund balance. But as of right now, they're written to basically zero. Your prepaid expenses stayed about the same. Moving down, you have your accounts payable and your accrued expenses. That went up slightly. And then at the bottom there, you can see your net position, your total net position of that 1.9 I mentioned on the prior slide is all in undesignated. So it's free and clear, doesn't have any restrictions on it. So that is the numbers for the OCFC. Unless Melissa wants to.
Does anybody have any questions on that information?
No, but I do have one comment.
Mm-hmm.
On your packet, you're referring to Orange County Funded Corporation, discreetly presented component of the Orange County IDA.
Mm-hmm.
We are actually, the OCFC is actually a separate entity than the Orange County IDA.
So part of the analysis that we performed is related to GASB 61, so our governmental accounting standard for 61. So we look at what influence the IDA might have on the CFC. If the board members are generally the same, it's a related organization. So we have to include the financials, even though it is a legally separate organization, because it's related in some capacity, We essentially have a discretely presented component unit,
Okay,
and just the way that the governmental accounting standards require us to present it.
okay. Just, again, because the public sees this, they may not understand and say,
Very true.
anybody have any questions?
Well, I was gonna, this is what is filed with the state, is this the part of the parish report, is that correct or no? Am I-
The approved budget, once approved by the full board next week, is uploaded to our Paris report, a semi-annual report.
And that will be this orange presentation that we just went through?
It'll be the
What was
full,
it
the full document. This is
Full
their
document,
presentation
right,
for this
right, right.
evening and next week, but yeah, it'll be the
Okay.
full binder.
Yes.
Okay. And then it's obviously, once we approve it, it'll be out of the draft form, is that correct?
Correct. If you request any revisions or any clarifications, and then the version that's approved by the board next week is what goes up.
Anybody else? Mark?
I mean, is this do you have any like, are we doing everything we should be doing properly?
Sure, so, if we were to identify anything in the internal control aspect of it, we would note it in this management letter here. If you look on page, 10 of this,
Yeah, that's what it's.
this is our internal control over financial reporting, letter. And you can see on the second to last paragraph towards the bottom, it says we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we've determined to be material weaknesses. If we found anything that was a control deficiency or a smaller matter, we would have another sentence there stating that there are other issues that we've identified that we're communicating to you. So we're happy to report that there were none listed in this letter. For the operations and the numbers of it, again, like Mark mentioned, with the closing fees going down this year, just continually be active in the CFC with the projects that are coming down the pipeline.
And again, like,
That's, with all due respect, I mean, that's not up to you. That's up to, you're
That's
here
up to
to
what comes
tell
before
us
us.
if we are doing what we should be doing and how we should be doing it.
right. But no, it's just, I mean, that's kind of what this entity is, though. I mean, there's projects, and there isn't as many projects, et cetera. Obviously, it was well-served for interest, obviously, we did well with that. However, on the opposite side of that, we do a lot of lending with this, and interest rate will be obviously higher, and people weren't borrowing, so maybe that has something to do with some of the lower amounts for less people.
When the bond rates come down more, it'll be a more interesting opportunity for people.
That's all, so but thank you.
Everybody's good then? So can I have a motion to approve to present this to the entire full board at our next meeting?
Motion that?
I will second.
Second, all in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Right, so we have a motion to pass this forward to the full committee.
All in favor, you said?
Yes.
Okay, so motion passes.
Motion Mark,
Got it.
second by
Understood.
Dean.
We got it, Marty has it, yep.
Okay. Seeing no more business for the OCFC, I would entertain a motion to
Adjourn, OCS?
adjourn. Thank you.
Sure.
I'll make the motion.
Can I have a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting for the OCFC is now adjourned.
Great, we're just gonna continue our live stream, by the way, for this, so.
Okay. So moving right into our next, to keep things flowing, I would like to call to order the meeting for the Orange County IDA Audit Committee. Can I have a roll call, please, Bill?
Yes, Susan Walsky,
Present.
Dean Tamburri,
Present.
Mark Green.
Present.
All right, all three of our committee members are present, and as far as staff, myself, Bill Fioravanti, Kelly Riley, and Marty Boras, as well as Jose Rojas doing our AV for acquisitions marketing, and of course, our guests Melissa Zott and Mark Callahan from PKF O'Connor Davies, our auditors.
Thank you very much. Our meeting was properly noticed on February 28th by Jeff D. Christ. He is the chairperson of the Orange County IDA. So we have that. Can we skip around? I'd rather go into the presentation, and we'll do the approval of minutes so we can get our guests out of here
Sure,
quickly.
great,
If
great
that's
idea.
okay with everybody?
Yes.
Mark, you okay with that?
Please.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to ask Melissa Zott from PKF O'Connor Davies to give us the presentation for our annual external audit for the Orange County IDA.
Great, perfect. So again, we prepared slides for you, which was what we'll focus on. You do have the management letter, the draft financial statements, and then we also issue a schedule of cash and investment, so we'll direct those in draft form. If we focus on the PowerPoint, again, we have our required communications we'll go over, and then we do have year-over-year changes. We did provide a summary overall, and then we'll go over into some major revenues and expenses, as well as your balance sheet also. The communications are the same as the corporation, but I will go through them again.
As efficiently as you can.
Sure, no problem. So making sure that the management and bill charge of governance has certain responsibilities, selecting appropriate accounting policies, making sure your financial statements are in accordance with GAAP, making sure you have effective internal control, appropriate checks and balances, and that you're in compliance with all of your laws and regulations. Again, it was a thorough audit, and so we appreciate the staff's cooperation with all the financial records provided to us. We have responsibilities as well on the next slide. So for the IDA, we do anticipate issuing an unmodified opinion. This is considered a clean opinion, the best opinion you could receive. We will also issue a yellow book report that's on your internal controls for financial reporting and compliance. And then in addition, we issue an investment report. That's a report on your cash and investments, the smaller report. We do issue a separate letter. It's a report to those charged with governance, communicating any deficiencies in internal controls, which will go after at the end.
I'm sorry to bother you.
Yes, sure.
Why do we have an investment report on this and we didn't have one on the FC?
Sure, great question. So the IDA is considered a public authority, so part of the Paris filing is requiring us to issue an investment report as well. So that's why we issue that for the IDA.
Okay, thank you.
We also look over the accounting policies for appropriateness. Again, if there were any fraud or legal acts that were none noted, we would have provided them to you before today. No difficulties or uncorrected misstatements, and no disagreements with management. Again, most importantly, we did maintain our independence as external auditors. So if you go to slide 5, this is the year-over-year change. This would just be the IDA. So you can see your total operating revenues at the top. It did increase about 60,000, so you came in about almost 600,000 in revenues. Your operating expenses dropped about 212,000, which is also positive for the IDA. So you can see last year you had a loss of 582,000. This year your loss dropped to 300,000, which is a positive change. Then you have your non-operating, so items that are not considered part of your operating day-to-day. Your interest income, similar to the corporation, did increase about 236,000. So it ended at year-end 279,000. Last year, you did have a loss on disposal of assets. That was due to the closing of the business accelerator, the winding down. This year, obviously, we didn't have a similar situation, so we did not report that. Ending your total change in net position. Last year, you can see there was a negative loss of 962,000. This year, it's only 29,000. So your net position started at 9.48 million, and then it just ended at 9.45 million. So what exactly happened during the year? If you go to slide 6, we'll focus on your revenues first. You can see that your closing fees jumped, so it ended at 542,000. There were 2 closings. 535,000 was related to the Goshen developer and the Royal Wine, and then about 7,000 to the OC Hospitality. So that increased. Last year there were the 3 West Warwick Energy Storage, so this year there was more revenue in your closing fees. There was a slight drop in your rental income. Again, that was due to the subtenant rentals that you had with the business accelerator that were winding down last year. Those would not be applicable in 23. Your administrative fees, you can see last year was 204,000. This year it's 0. That was entirely related to the IBM agreement that was terminated last year, and that was the last collection of that. So we didn't anticipate receiving that this year. Your other income dropped a little bit, that would just be your miscellaneous. And then that brings your total operating, as we spoke, to $597,000. Your interest income, again, increased due to the high interest rates. Your interest rates are between 4.5% to 5.5% on your CDs. So that's your total revenue of $877,000. If you go to slide 7, we can look at your operating expenses. So as you see, there was a larger spending item on your projects and special initiatives. That would just be the activity that happened during the year. Your payroll taxes did increase. That's your third line down. So that increased about $65,000. You did start profit sharing for your 401k this year, so you did contribute to that. Your rental expense did drop. It's kind of twofold. Again, with the subtenant rentals, you're no longer renting that space as well with the business accelerator. In addition, we did have to look at your lease with the Fort Crotty Lane. So that qualified to be considered under GASB 87, which is a lease standard. So we had to put a lease payable. I'll show you that when we get to the balance sheet, but that does impact your rental expense as well. Your professional fees dropped about $89,000. The drop was mainly in your pass-through costs or your pass-through fees for your legal and your local labor auditing that you didn't necessarily have this year in '23. The last item I want to touch on is your depreciation and amortization. So last year it was $63,000. This year it's $42,000. Generally, you would expect this to be consistent year over year. You wouldn't necessarily have a lot of activity, but as we mentioned on the summary slide, we did have a loss on disposal, so that large deletion of your fixed assets essentially would reduce your depreciation. And then second line to the bottom, like we talked about, that's your loss on disposal of the asset. So that brings to a major expenses. We captured 94% above the line, but your total expenses were at $906,000. If we go to the balance sheet, this is going to be your assets and liabilities. Similar to the corporation here, you have your cash and equivalents that went down $350,000. Your investments went up $440,000. So there was just a movement. The investments are considered if it's mature beyond 90 days. So if you buy a CD or you invest in a CD, that's would classify under an investment. Your accounts receivable net of allowance did drop a little bit. That was due to more collections during the year. Your due from other governments also dropped. That's amounts due from other municipalities or other governments. Mainly this line is due from the college, Orange County Community College. So you did collect on that, and now you only are owed $300, which is great. Prepaid expenses adjust due to timing of the policies that you might have. And then the big jump here, the capital assets being depreciated, you can see that increased $99,000. This is related to your lease that we talked about, so your Fort Crotty Lane. It correlates to the leases payable at the bottom of your liabilities. So part of the lease standard is that we have to report the long-term cost of the lease for Fort Crotty Lane. So you have your lease payable for $111,000. We're also required to report a right to use asset. So you have the right to use the building here. And so it kind of offsets each other. The net effect on your bottom line is minimal. We are required to kind of bring those down differently. Your lease payable is going to be your rental payments over time. Your capital asset, your right to use asset, is just amortized straight line. So a little bit different. Ultimately, the change is offset. So you see an increase in your fixed asset for almost $100,000, an increase for your lease payable for $111,000. So those two are directly related.
But, excuse me, I don't want to.
Sure.
But so we've had this Fort Crotty Lane in 2022, correct? I mean, so we've had it there, but it wasn't. the same, or am I?
We downsized it, remember when we were looking for
No, I
space?
understand. Yeah,
We renegotiated the
So-
lease.
right. Is that much?
So as of 12/31/22, so as of last year, the contract had not been renewed at that
Correct.
point.
This is-
So,
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Saying.
Please go
No,
ahead.
no, no, she'll do it better. Basically, it's, the new lease now has to be front-loaded.
Mhm.
So the reason why it was dwindling down at the end of '22 is because our lease was up. So there was less to owe, right? So you'll
Exactly.
explain it better than I will.
I got you, I got you. So I knew we did that or whatever, but I was just like, okay.
yeah, so now the lease matures in 2026, whereas before it was right at that year end. Minimal changes in your accounts payable, deposits, and there's no more amounts due to the corporation. So that brings your total liabilities to $241,000. Your net position is broken out into three buckets. One is your investment in capital assets. That's just trying to report how much of your net position is invested right now into your fixed assets, your buildings, your right to use asset, that kind of stuff. Then you have your unrestricted. Your unrestricted is reported into two different subcategories. Your designated is going to be directly related to your next year's budget. So how much of this money is anticipated to be spent next year or the year we're in now. So the $300,000 is related to the shovel ready program. That's what you budgeted spending in '24. And that leaves your undesignated at $9.1 million. So it just dropped about $92,000 year over year. Not too bad where we ended up, so. And I think that's all I have on the numbers. Are there any questions on the numbers before I jump into the management letter?
I think most of it makes sense. Yeah, I just think because we knew we were having, all the interest, setting up the 401K and everything else, so I think that was, can you, under what line? Under payroll, was it payroll taxes that the 401K fell into?
Payroll taxes would fall,
Okay, then that explains it, okay, thank you.
of course. So,
I was curious why that was classified like that, why that is payroll taxes. Can you explain why that is?
so which generally it would be payroll taxes or benefits. We could definitely segregate the two. If
Just
you'd
curious,
like
I'm
to
not
do that.
nitpicking, I'm trying
Oh,
to
sure.
really educate myself on that, but
Yeah,
it
so.
really should be classified there, or technically there's leeway.
Yeah, so these are your financial statements, so we can definitely even rename it to payroll taxes and benefits as well, so.
If
I would just say
Did you?
make that line item have both descriptions in there, so it's not, again, thinking of the public.
That's what I was just gonna say, when you see the line, the change in value on that one line, so.
We can definitely make that change,
Thank you.
of course.
I hate to make you kill a couple more trees just for that, but
That's
you wanna
okay.
get it right.
Does anybody have any questions about the slides? Because there is another component of this that we do need to address today.
I do.
Just the slides, okay.
So if you go to this document for the IDA, this is the report to those charged with governance. On the first couple of slides, there's a letter from us, and contents, a table of contents, the status, and then the next few slides are just the required communications. We were able to summarize those for you in the slides. Page 10 is going to be our report on internal control over financial reporting. As you can see, the third line from the bottom, we did not identify any material weaknesses during the audit. The next sentence says we did identify another consideration that we did want to communicate with you. So if you look on page 11, so there's different categories. There's a material weakness, which is the highest, comment, control deficient, significant deficiency, which doesn't necessarily rise to a material level, control deficiency, which are just items that are important to note, and then other matters, which is the lowest level that we want to inform you of. So it's a best practice. You do have a disposition of property policy guidelines, and in that policy, It does identify a capitalization threshold of 5,000. But best practice requires a separate capitalization policy that identifies these three things. So first thing you'd want to make sure is that you define what a capital asset is. Second thing would be to make sure that it explicitly states that capital assets are recorded at historical cost when you've acquired the asset. And then lastly, and more of a documentation issue, is just making sure you put the number of years that you're retaining the documentation to support your fixed assets. Having a good structured policy is always good for the agency.
All right. Speak English.
So
Oh, sure.
if you look at this document that was handed to you,
Yes, yeah, they have this as a single page. Yeah, that's the template that PKF provided, as they did last year when they recommended the credit card policy.
Right.
Implementation, they gave us a template. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, I just, what would you, in English, define a capital asset that we have not done appropriately?
So it's not necessarily that the capital assets are not recorded appropriately, it's just the policy to making sure that every fixed asset is gonna be handled in the same manner. They were handled in the same manner, but there's no policy supporting that. So if the management were to change and there's no formal policy being followed, they could essentially do something different.
Okay, so how could, so again, in English, how can we do better? Like, how can we
Sure.
be
So-
better?
Take a look
Give
at
it
this
like
too,
this
though,
is
Mark, if you would, because it really does spell out some of the language that they're,
So we were doing it properly, just there wasn't a policy
It's not formal.
describing what we
Correct.
were doing.
Correct, yes.
so like our lease would be a capital asset.
Mhm. Any, if you were to purchase a building, you'd wanna have that defined in there.
So we're gonna get involved in the shovel-ready, our percentage of whatever agreement we come up with a property owner, that's gonna be a capital asset.
Would be at that time, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, so what is the policy we have for that? And is it gonna, you know, we would hope it would appreciate, but you have to have a depreciation schedule as well.
There's different methods for depreciating, so having something that's like a straight line, which is normally what municipalities use. So you're bringing it down the same amount every year. You just wanna make sure that every single year you have a policy that you're following. So again, similar to the credit card policy, you wanna make sure those are approved in the same manner, same documentation attached. This is just related to your capital assets. What do you consider to be a capital asset? How are you gonna be depreciating that? What type of documents are you gonna obtain to support it? So having this policy in place will make sure that whatever turnover happens year over year, that there's a specific guideline to follow.
And these are assets of 5,000 and greater according to, or this is just a sample, it is 5,000 and greater.
So you do have a policy already, it's a disposition of property policy guidelines, that's, just getting rid of, certain properties. And that identifies a threshold of 5,000, so that's already in your policy, this policy, disposition of property guideline.
so that was actually my question, is how does what comes out of the disposition policy feed, or, you know, in any of these blanks here?
Sure, so yeah, this template is like the AICPA guideline. You could definitely merge the two together
Okay.
and just call it capitalization as a whole.
But technically, we don't have to be different figures, different,
Yes, it could be different. Mhm.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, so what, I mean, should it be 5,000, should it be less, should it be more, should it be?
We come to that
Or
number.
are you gonna make a recommendation on that quantity or that amount? Would you do that, or not?
So generally, I think we normally see 5,000 for most municipalities, that's what I generally see. So that's what I would make a recommendation. When we saw your policy, I wasn't, this policy with the 5,000, I wasn't surprised at the number, so that's what I would utilize since you already have that.
So I guess my question, like, so, like, where do we put this piece of paper? You know, like, I'm trying to understand.
we're gonna modify this obviously, to customize it for us, and then it would, I'm just trying to think of what committee, we don't have council on, but I imagine finance committee, I don't know,
Finance
audit committee,
committee.
should we really through the finance committee, imagine? And that's how you would consider it, propose it, you know, move to accept it, and it be approved, and then it done by the board,
So my question would be, is that
just to formalize the policy.
we have a minimum of a 5,000. Should there be a maximum that then you go into a different policy?
Generally, I just see a minimum.
Okay,
Mhm.
so because some of the projects we work in, you know, can be upwards towards $1 million commitment to something. And that's why I'm saying, would that require?
Trigger something else?
Yeah,
So this would be for capital assets that the agency holds property to, or holds title to. So if you were to buy a property that the agency owns, if you were to buy the desks, that would be an equipment. So you wouldn't want necessarily nickel and dime every single thing, so if you.
yeah, but if we buy a parcel of land for
Yes.
development, that's what I'm saying, that could run into, you know, umpteen.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, so if it's something that's gonna be significant, but the agency holds title to, you definitely wanna keep track of it.
Okay.
All right.
Do you still,
No, I got it.
go,
You know, it's not, for me, it's more like semantics.
Exactly.
Like, you know, like, do you fill this out and put it in a file, or is, you know, is this going to be documented in a way that if you leave, we all leave, the
Sure.
next people can find it and understand it? That's what I'm trying to get at, like, where does this get put?
I believe all the policies are on your website as well.
exactly, we do, so, which is just housekeeping, I understand.
Okay.
But I think part of the answer is, this goes to our CFO for hire. They need to understand this is from, they're helping to govern us, you know, every day with how we operate, and working with our auditors to make sure we're doing it in accordance with our own policies and generally accepted principles.
And I see, you know, nobody's in anything permanently, you know, if something changes, the next person comes on line and they say, okay, so this is how this is done.
Okay. I have, I mean, are you done?
Yes.
But wait a second, because of what you had said, Mark, so you acquire an asset that's not proper, or some sort of piece of equipment, it's $10,000, say, okay, so that will fall under this policy, correct?
Mhm.
So at that point, go back to what Mark said, okay, we have this piece of paper or whatever, we have to document, stamp it, register it, and then start, just identify it as an asset,
Yeah, so.
because it's over that amount.
Correct, yes. And it helps because you would want to make sure anything significant, so if it is over 5,000, that the agency is tracking it appropriately, which you are doing currently. And then it would be reported in your financial statements as a capital asset on here in your schedule.
What do we have that's over 5,000?
A
Obviously the
copier.
lease, obviously the lease.
A
Sometimes
copier.
they lease copiers, I don't know if you own
I'm
them.
just-
lease
So you lease it, so I don't know if that counts
But
or
if
not.
it's some
Yeah,
point
but trying to
of
think, I mean,
purchase-
But again, at some
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
as
Of
I'm
course,
saying,
of
like,
course.
we buy a piece
No,
of
no, no,
land
no,
or
I'm not
something.
saying don't have this, I'm just trying to
A
think.
phone
what we have.
system, if they upgrade the phone system here,
Right, if you would upgrade it, correct.
right, I'm just saying, but that would be, you know, a capital asset.
Of course, but I'm just.
Upgrade to the AV, to drop $5,000 on anything technologies these days, you can do in about, I can do it in about 8 seconds, but, you know, in a minute, you can spend that kind of money.
Mhm.
There is a detailed listing that supports the numbers. I
Okay.
can get that over to you if you want to forward
Great,
it on.
thanks.
I can send that over.
So, are we done with that topic?
Oh, I was gonna ask, does anybody have any more questions for PKF O'Connors while we're here?
Well, I have one more question.
Okay,
If we're done with, are you good?
I think so, yes.
okay.
So, is there anything, you suggested this,
Mhm.
right? Is there anything that you see coming down the pike? Is there anything you see that others are doing? Like, anything that you think should be on our, you know, that we should consider for next, like, anything that you're seeing others doing that you think are doing better than we are, is my question to you. Like, you know, you gave it, I'm very happy that you gave us the ratings. Just kind of always want to think, is there anyone doing something better than we are that we can improve upon?
Yeah, it's a great
So
question.
this is a qualitative question. And I know you accountants aren't good at the qualitative, but just, you know, other clients you're working with.
Yeah.
Is there anything that, and you know, frankly and selfishly, I hope your answer is no. But is there something that?
But you ask it genuinely wanting to know.
It's
if
like the
there-
difference
there's
between
room for
an
improvement.
umpire and a referee. He's only gonna tell you if there's something wrong, he's not
Yes.
gonna tell you what you can,
Yes.
so.
Mhm.
No, it's a good question. We do audit several public authorities during the year. Well, they're March 31st deadline. So from the ones that I do and the others that we talk to, generally we look from entity to entity to see if there's any differences. And if we did find any areas of improvement or things that we could see could be done better here, we do compare it against the other organizations, and we would have included it in the management letter.
One more question.
Sure.
Our accounting, how we're doing our accounting with our, outside, you thanked, I can't, knowing them, I have to imagine they're incredibly, willing to help in any way. Was everything as smooth as it could have been? Is there anything we could have done better as far as the process, or as my friends up north say, the process?
Sure, so I would say, no. The only thing, if there were any material adjustments that were identified, so if we go through the audit and we have to post 20 entries, we would have included that in this report as well. The only thing that we identified on the agency side was related to the implementation of the leases for the Fort Crotty Lane, which is a more complicated standard. We do generally assist with the implementation of that. But if there were issues with the accounting records, you would see a long list of adjustments here. And that was the only one for this one. I don't think there were any for the corporation.
So what I'm hearing is we are doing what we're supposed to do.
Yes,
I can attest to the fact that they have a laundry list, you do get it.
yes.
Well, sometimes a person just wants to hear it, Susan.
Very true.
For all the times we don't get the compliment, I feel like sometimes we gotta pull the compliment once in a while.
Having sat on other sides of this is joyful today.
Exactly, and I give credit not to these guys, but not just to these guys, but to the finance committee for what you've done, and especially these two ladies here, Marty
Yeah,
and
these
Kelly. They
two.
make it go, they're very, very.
We know who's doing it right, though.
Okay.
We know who the eye candy is,
She kinda threw
and who's
it-
doing the
all
work.
right, 'cause
Don't
she
you
kinda
worry,
threw it all on us. I wanna clarify.
you don't need to mention it.
Thank you.
I have no more questions.
Okay, so hearing no more questions, I would like to ask somebody to put forth a motion that we accept the report as presented to be presented to the full committee at our next meeting.
Make the motion.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you all, really
Thank you.
appreciate your
Speak
feedback.
to you soon. Yes,
Okay, great.
thank you, Mark.
Okay, moving forward, because I'd like to keep
Yes, terrific.
life in line. We're gonna go through our minutes from our last 2 and 3rd meetings here, and they are combined, both the OCFC and the OCIDA minutes have been combined for the audit committee. Moving forward, they will be broken out into separate minutes. Another note on the March 9th meeting,
Mhm.
or was it the March 22nd? What? 22nd?
Nine.
9th meeting. We did have a quorum present. Dean had actually also voted on it at the time, who was not a member, but that's a moot point because there was a quorum of members to vote on action items. I'd like to ask, has
Hey,
it,
I'm just trying to, stay positive and feel my,
He's on a high road.
who took my motion?
have you had, the members of the committee had the opportunity to review the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes both of March 9th and March 22nd for the OCFC and OCIDA Audit Committee.
I will make that motion.
Can I have a second?
When do I ask questions? I know you had asked before, but like in between, when we, like, the only other comments we made was like, because because of the time frame, it's a while ago. Should we somehow bring them forward sooner or not? I mean, because it's a year old, right, to approve this stuff?
I think it's because we haven't had an audit.
No, I understand that, and we might not
But
have
we
had
will
one,
have
but I
another
don't know. I
one in
mean,
about a month.
should we just meet to?
Well, we
or
need
do
a
a quick
second, then we
meeting
can
to-
have discussion.
Okay,
Yeah.
second.
Okay, now we have discussion.
Okay, that was my only comment. discussion.
Okay, so we had a meeting in April of last year. We can't approve these minutes outside of this committee. So we would have to have had a special meeting simply for the purpose of approving minutes.
And we do post them as drafts, Marty does promptly after every meeting, and then once they are approved, then the draft part comes off and they're approved, but we're complying still. just to be
No,
clear.
I don't doubt that at all. But if this happens, would we be better served if we added a committee meeting somewhere, just even if it was for several minutes, just to approve, to finish this, and then go into another meeting? In other words, like, first it would be, if we have the meetings at 5 or 4:30, have one at,
If I may,
you know,
Sue.
I don't know, I'm just.
We'd have to notice that, we'd have to plan for it and everything,
I got
make
it.
the thing.
It's not- yeah.
I think their answer to your question is, strange it hasn't happened yet, but it will, I believe, more commonly, is you're also the local labor waiver committee. And I'm gonna come to you probably in 3 or 4 weeks for another meeting like this, so, and we haven't really had, too much of that in the last year, so it will be, and we'll have the opportunities to review audit
Okay.
committee meetings, I think because of that, minutes more frequently.
And I would say if we don't have any business as an audit committee, within 90 days after the next meeting, if the committee members are willing, we can have a special meeting just to approve minutes. It'll be a quick 15-minute meeting.
God bless you.
That's what-
And then this way, we have that off the table and we're not trying to, because I read through them too and I'm like, man, that's not good.
Yeah,
All right.
I mean, it's just, it's a long way back.
Yeah.
And there's something about closure, right?
Could we, maybe we need a policy for that? No.
I mean, it's up to, it's up to the committee
So I voted
members.
when I wasn't supposed to.
But if you're
That's-
comfortable with that, I'm fine with doing that. And if staff is okay with that, because I know it's an extra step for them, but again, it's easier for everybody to
We'll
keep.
do whatever you want.
I mean,
absolutely.
even if we can just, like Dean said, tack it on to, like, all right, these notes, these meeting notes, we can approve in supposedly 4 to 6 weeks at another meeting that we're gonna have, you just said.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
this-
then that meeting will be, my math is correct, roughly in April, maybe the May or June,
I'm
normal
saying within 90
time.
days, if nothing comes
Yeah.
up, we can have a 15-minute meeting.
Yeah,
Prior
prior
to
to an existing
An
meeting.
existing meeting.
Well, but then again, like I said, he said it has to be noticed, so
Well, we
we're
can do it,
having.
we'll schedule it for 4:30 on, before a finance committee meeting or something like that.
Something
We
Or an
can.
IDA meeting or
Yeah.
something.
Correct,
yeah.
Okay.
We do it in between,
Are
something like
you
that.
guys better with that? Does that
Please.
work? Okay.
Got it.
And again, I don't
Talk
think
to council
it's a
about that.
15-minute, I think it's a 5-minute, like, you're just gonna approve the
If it's just
minutes. So,
Formality,
yeah,
so,
but this way we
Okay.
can close and move on.
any more discussion?
No.
Hearing no more discussion, I'd like to call for those in favor to accept the minutes.
Aye.
Aye, 3 ayes.
Motion carries.
Seeing no more business, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
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 All
Meeting
right.
adjourned.
Thanks so much.